level of output I've had over the last 5 months, your girl burned out. And honestly, I know that for many of you who are listening or have been watching me for a long time, you probably saw this coming from a mile away, especially because I went full tilt boogie, y'all. Classes, one-on-ones, content, podcasts, newsletters, cohorts. I mean, so many things and so many more things to come. And well, I genuinely thought that I left behind a lot of the workaholism that had plagued me for so many years in the different industries I've worked in. I just gave it a rebrand and called it entrepreneurship and content creation. And so what better way to return to how to give a damn about your workplace than to talk about being damn burned out? Because listen, here I am teaching you all about the importance of embracing rest, empowering yourself, taking care of your health, embracing joys and active resistance. And boom, my body went, girl, you are done. You're done. All right. If you're new here, my name is Beverly. I am a chief operating officer, creator, author, artist, and welcome back to How to Give a Damn About Your Workplace. And I said welcome back because your girl disappeared for a hot minute. And I'm about to tell you exactly why. Spoiler alert, it involves me recreating toxic work patterns I thought I had escaped, just with a different focus and maybe even a ring light. How many of us can relate to the duality of burnout if you do, burnout if you don't? Because I literally recreated corporate culture in my home office without even realizing it, complete with impossible standards, guilt about taking breaks, constantly obsessing over metrics, and just constant self-improvement, and ultimately the same exhaustion that I thought I'd left behind. And the additional layer of it all is running my own business for the first time. And we don't talk enough about how if you are an entrepreneur, if you're going after your own doors that you're creating, you are your own boss, your own worker, your own systems, your own everything. And even with the incredible help that I've had from the team at Foxy as a Foxy creator partner, even then, the burnout was going to be inevitable without the right system. The real kicker for me is that I'm making a podcast about workplace empathy and showing myself zero empathy. I'm teaching all about boundaries, while my own boundaries were absolutely non-existent, especially in the first part of my journey as an entrepreneur and a creator. The call was truly coming from inside the house, and I was too busy grinding to be able to answer it because I was so motivated and have been so motivated by this incredible community. And every time I'm thinking of all these new ideas, these things that I wish that somebody had taught me throughout my career, and there's this incredible call and response that's coming from myself and our community that I'm like, oh, let's keep going. But y'all, no matter what bow you put on it, no matter what decor, whether it's positive or not, burnout is still burnout. So we're going to get into it because I wanted to dive deep on a few things that we don't talk about as it relates to burnout. And I want to stress that this is not your typical, guys, take care of yourselves, learn from my mistakes kind of. No, this is not that type of an episode because I want to talk about some deeper level things that I didn't even realize were impacting my burnout that may be impacting you. And hopefully that can help you as you think about the ways in which you can self-advocate like I have begun to do. We are kicking off this episode with scarcity mindset because there's no way else to begin than talking about how this invisible cage snuck up around me so freaking quickly. I'll be honest with you, I was so surprised at how this mindset jumped and leapt onto me during this entire journey as I have navigated the last 5 months growing my platform, growing this community. And it wasn't until trusted people in my life started saying, hey, these are some scarcity mindset thought processes that I at first was a little insulted. I'm not going to lie, because I have always prided myself on an abundance mindset. I've always said that I believe that abundance is the only way that we can continue to grow as a community. So what do you mean I've got a scarcity mindset? I mean, I was really defensive. I was not trying to hear it. I want to paint the picture of what scarcity mindset actually looks like in the workplace or in your everyday life, especially if you are a woman, if you're part of marginalized backgrounds, because there is so much more to it than I ever thought. And we're going to start off with this very real thing that, again, if it surprised me, it may be impacting you too, and you don't even know it. In 2023, the Oxford Academic Journal of Public Administration Research and Theory formally defined scarcity mindset as the mere feeling of having insufficient resources to cope with demands, and further went on to explain how scarcity mindset narrows mental bandwidth and causes cognitive tunneling. But I want us to think about it in this way. So let's say, and I want you to reflect on this truly, think about a time when you have finally gotten an opportunity that you've been really hungry for, or maybe you started your own business venture on the side or full time and you were really, really going for it. Or maybe you auditioned for a show that you, after a while of not getting any callbacks, you finally got a role that you were excited about. No matter the scenario, I want you to reflect on a time where you finally got a opportunity, somebody threw you a bone as it relates to something that you've been working hard for and you've been really excited about. As you reflect on that, then I want you to think about the voices that maybe had come into your head telling you that if you don't really crush this, if you don't do an amazing job, if you don't go above and beyond, if you don't do whatever it is you need to do to keep this opportunity, you are never going to get another opportunity again. So I want to ask you, has that voice been talking to you recently? Have you heard that voice before? And here are a couple ways that this has come up for me that maybe can jog your memory as to whether or not it's coming up for you. I want to first start off with friendships. Now, I know that this is a podcast about workplace and investing in yourself and empowering yourself in the workplace, but we're going to start with friendships because I had to really do some back-end research on myself and some deep reflection when this was first brought to me, because I'm like, where are the origins of some of this? Now, I have shared this before on other posts and platforms. I experienced a pretty egregious bullying as early as 5 years old. It's my earliest memories of it. And we're talking about physical violence and other things that I won't get into on this episode. But from a very young age, I have experienced exclusion when it came to friends and just struggling in general to find my place in an environment that did not have many people who looked like me or were like me. And so whenever I would get a friend, I poured every single thing into that person. And maybe you can relate to this, right? Like anytime they call, I pick up the phone no matter what hour it is, because I genuinely was so grateful to have meaningful friendships, or at least I thought. And I thought that the best way for me to show up as a friend was by pouring myself, even if that meant I wasn't sleeping, even if that meant I was bending over backwards, because little did I know at the time, little Beverly, high school Beverly, college Beverly, grad school Beverly, genuinely in the recesses of her mind feared that I'd never get a quality friendship again. And so what do? You continue to pour and pour and pour and pour and pour, but after a while it's unsustainable. And listen, nobody's perfect. I'm most certainly not. But there was a consistent motif as I was doing this reflection. And again, maybe you've experienced this too, where you look back and you're like, dang, you're pouring and pouring and pouring into folks, constantly being available, paying for things, going above and beyond all the time, not to mention navigating everything else you have in your own life, but still showing up time after time after time after time after time, and them not showing up for you in the same way. And even though your logical brain will tell you this person probably isn't a good friend to you, or this person isn't, who you should be around, my emotional brain, my scarcity mindset was like, but it's been so long since you've had people to hang out with, or friends to chill with, or whatever the narrative was at the time. And so you continue to step into those spaces that don't serve you because you're fearful that you may never find another friend again, or worse, what happens if you're alone? What'll happen to you if you don't have any friends at all? But then what's so funny though, right, is that the moments where I decided to choose myself and no longer invest and overexert energy with folks who were not reciprocating that energy, people still came into my life. New people still came into my life. But your scarcity mindset doesn't feel that. Your scarcity mindset doesn't know that. Same thing goes for jobs. When I was unemployed during the pandemic and slightly before it, applying hundreds and hundreds of jobs a day, I had this sneaking thought in the back of my mind of like, what if you never get a high paying job again? Because if you've read my book, or if you're familiar with my storytelling, I left a big girl job in New York that was unfortunately not the healthiest place for me at all. And I was really suffering that year, but I had left this big girl job with the paid for apartment in New York City and this whole thing. And my mind, as time went on and no opportunities were coming in, no interviews were coming in, my mind literally said, well, Beverly, what if you never get another high paying job again? So you might as well just take whatever you can get. And I don't even have to go there when it comes to relationships. I'm sure many of you who are listening are going to be nodding your head when I say that, because again, sunken cost fallacy, right? Pour everything you can into this thing that's not serving you, because you may never have a quality relationship again. And so even though this isn't quality, you just still do it, still pour into it, because, this scarcity mindset, it bleeds into so many different areas. But once a data-backed girly, always a data girly. So I want to get into the data really quick, because according to a research study from the Financial Wellness Forum, scarcity mindset literally rewires your brain. It rewires your brain. When you're operating from a place of not enough money, not enough opportunities, not enough security, your brain shifts into a constant survival mode. And if you are somebody who is unemployed right now or are in job transition right now, you are also somebody that I'm talking to too, because if you're in this constant state of survival mode and constantly thinking about what you don't have, what could not happen for you, especially as it relates to financial stress, the University of Georgia found that financial stress in general creates a direct pathway to burnout and lower job satisfaction. And the kicker is that where it gets personal for women, marginalized groups, is that we're more likely to experience this because we're systematically paid less and given fewer advancement opportunities. So the cycle feeds itself. The NCBI Neuroscience Research Center showed that scarcity mindset increases activity in your brain's immediate valuation center while decreasing activity in areas responsible for long-term planning. So to translate, you making decisions based off of fear instead of strategy is the default. And then when you're affirmed in that default, right, by there being less pay, less opportunities, and so on, it validates the damn thing. And so then what you're stuck with is this constant state of fear, even if you think you're being strategic. Like I said, this snuck up on me. I'm like, I'm not being fearful. I'm not being, you know what? I am having that mindset, and it shows up everywhere. So what do you do about it, especially as it relates to the job market? Because let me tell you the fattest freaking lie that you are constantly hearing on social media, in the news about this damn hiring market. You are being lied to. The narrative that nobody's hiring, that the market is impossible, that the market is terrible, has created a scarcity mindset that has got people hugging jobs that are literally destroying their mental health, or taking jobs that are below what they're worth, or not even thinking about considering jobs that should be what they're going for, leadership roles, so on, because they're fearful. And this isn't a hypothetical. I cannot tell you how many clients I have met with over the past several months who I have had to look them in the face and say, why are you applying to entry-level roles when you are a VP level? Why are you applying to junior level roles when you're a senior level manager or senior level IC? And the response every time are scarcity mindset responses. Well, I heard online that if I have too much experience, then I'm not going to be picked up. Or I saw that if I go for more entry-level roles, I could potentially negotiate at the higher end of the band. And then it makes me so sad because then I have to tell them, what are you talking about? You're a leader, or you're a senior professional, or you're this, or you're that. Or even if you're not, even if you've come to me and you truly are entry-level, but if you're going after things that are, you're intentionally low balling yourself or intentionally not going big with your journey, it is a product of this fear-based fear-mongering, like I continue to say, and it's on purpose, because the truth that they don't want you to know is that there are 7.2 million job openings in the US right now. I already know that several of you are going to be listening to this and going, well, Beverly, I've been applying, and nothing's been working. I haven't gotten an interview. I haven't gotten a job. So clearly something has to be wrong with me. No. This is exactly how they want you to think, so that you'll accept whatever job, especially because guess who benefits from your scarcity mindset? It's not you. Who benefits from your scarcity mindset are companies that are getting you at a fraction of the price, or spaces that are getting you at a fraction of what you deserve, or lower titles than what you deserve, or you getting with a friend group that is not at all committed to the level of friendship that you want, and you are pouring it. They benefit from you doing that because there's no expectation for them to give that back to you. Same thing with a romantic partner, same thing with any context. They benefit from you having a scarcity mindset. If you are part of a marginalized community, let's be real about why this hits harder. I will never forget that when I was a junior in college, I applied to be an RA after the director of the Multicultural Center at the time had multiple times been like, Beverly, are you applying to be an RA? Like, you'd be a great RA. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I kind of put it off. And then finally, she and I were passing each other, walking up campus. And she was like, Beverly, it closes in a couple days. You need to apply to it. Like, you'd be great. And at the time, I didn't really have a plan for my housing situation for the next year. And I applied to it, and I knew that it was a vigorous process because I've been told by other people that you really got to have your A game. So I really, really prepped and prepared for this interview process because, listen, if I'm going to apply to something, I'm going to go full out, right? I studied and I prepped, and I'm going through the interview process, and I finally, after getting to the final rounds of the RA process, I'll never forget, I'm sitting outside of the interview space waiting for my final interview of the day. And a girl who had been an RA, and I believe still was at the time, approached me in the hall. And as I'm sitting there, she said, Beverly, like, are you interviewing to be an RA? And I said, yes. And she goes, well, you got the job, right? Like, you don't have anything to worry about. Because I think it was evident on my face that I was really being intensive and maybe a little nervous because, again, when you prep for something and you want to do a good job, you might be a little nervous when you're sitting in the waiting room of the thing because this is all live, right? I looked at her quizzically and I said, well, what do you mean? I mean, I'm actively interviewing right now. She said, no, Beverly, like, they're going to give you the job because, you know. And she looked at me and it occurred to me, oh my God, she's saying I'm going to get this job because I'm meeting a quota. And I remember feeling so deflated because when I did get the job, right, there was a very significant questioning period I had that entire year. I was genuinely wondering now, okay, did I actually get this job off of merit or was I filling a quota? Because not only her, other people throughout the year, and these are students, right? Other students throughout the year were like, oh, Beverly, like beyond you being Beverly, you were going to get the job because da, da, da. And it was almost like a joke, like it was understood kind of a thing. And I guess it bothered me more than I realized it did because at the end of my senior year, we're nearing graduation and I have a meeting with my supervisor and we were doing that like end of year recap, reflections and so on. And I just had to ask him, I said, hey, if you don't mind, and whatever you can tell me, but I actually wanted to ask you about my interview process. And he looked at me super quizzically and he said, oh, sure. What do you want to know? And I said, how did I do? And he looked super confused and he said, how did you do? What do you mean? You got the job? And he started giggling a little. And in a brave moment of vulnerability, I said, no, I really got to ask you, did I get this role because of like the quality of my interview, or did I get this role because the university was trying to fill a quota of students of color? And I'll never forget the look on his face because he looked so hurt. Like he looked genuinely so hurt, I think for me, but just in general. And he goes, Beverly, what? And I said, this is what folks have said to my face. This is what I've been hearing. And I didn't want to leave my time here. At the time, I thought it was my time. I went to grad school like right after, but I thought I was graduating and leaving the campus. I said, I don't want to leave here feeling like I only got this opportunity because of what I look like, because I really did prepare and go all out for this interview process. And I care a lot about what I've done here and how I've led. And I just would like to know from you, since you were a part of the process. And he looked at me and he said, Beverly, I can't go into too many specifics, but I need to tell you that you did such an excellent job in your interview process that people were actively trying to figure out how they could get you in their building. It was not a question of if you were getting the job, it was where we were going to place you because of how well you did. And the healing that that moment gave for me, I didn't even realize was healing, except for the fact that I knew that he was really serious. And for his personality, I mean, at the time when we worked together, he was very jovial, very lighthearted, and he just looked piercingly at me. And it was very clear that not only was he offended and hurt that this was being said to me, but he also wanted it to be incredibly clear that I had gotten this role based off of my preparation and my presentation in that space. And I share that story because I want you to reflect on what that year was like for me. Because think about it, every decision, every meeting, every space I was in, I was genuinely believing, even if I didn't acknowledge it, even if I pushed forward anyway, because how many of us push forward anyway, despite the negativity we hear or despite the things we hear from other people, right? I genuinely felt a deep pinch that, wow, maybe the only reason why I'm in this room is because they had a quota to fill and I'm not going to get opportunities like this again, potentially. And like this kind of rabbit hole of thinking. And it was really hard. And I want you to reflect on the times that this has happened for you, because it happens a lot. Even if it's not in the particular context of somebody telling you, yeah, the only reason why you got something is X, or the only reason why you got, but in any other context, like when family members tell you, oh, you better stay with that partner because it's hard out here to find partners, or when your friends are like, ooh, it's hard finding good friends out here, even though you're telling them that you're being harmed, or even though you're telling them that they're not treating you well, or even at work, you know, when people are like, hey, the hiring market right now is crazy, but you are being bullied constantly at work, right? there's this invalidation that you start to have with yourself of like, well, maybe everyone's right. And here's what I want you to understand. The hypervigilance that kept your ancestors alive is now keeping you trapped in situations that are slowly killing you. Because according to Wage Stream's research on financial well-being, employees experiencing financial stress are 20% less focused and take 7 additional sick days per year. So when you're operating from scarcity, you're literally making yourself less competitive while thinking you're being safe the whole time. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. Here's the real cost beyond all of that. The behavioral health technology research shows that 63% of workers report economic uncertainty negatively affecting their well-being. And where it gets me is that we're so busy being grateful for what we have that we don't fight for what we deserve. Scarcity mindset makes you feel less likely to negotiate, less likely to apply for stretch roles, less likely to invest in your professional development. The Financial Wellness Forum even found that people with scarcity mindset avoid investing in skills development because they fear they can't cover basic expenses. So why would I even be able to get opportunities to the things that'll need to develop and move me forward? Why should I go after those things when I can barely pay the bill? And what it does is it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where you stay underqualified and underpaid because you're too scared to invest in yourself, or you're too scared to take that step forward that you need to for yourself, because it's a death of 1,000 cuts. Take a really short break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about burnout disguised as passion, because there is a danger in that too that creeps up that furthers burnout when you like what you're doing. This episode is brought to you by the Hiring Market Hack Academy. While everyone else is complaining about the impossible job market, I've helped hundreds of people land jobs within the last 5 months. Want to know how? I'm a COO who's been in the hiring room for over a decade and in over 10 different industries. In the US alone, there are 7.2 million job openings right now. But the issue is that 99% of you are using the same strategies that everyone else is using. The Hiring Market Hack Academy gives you the real insider playbook. And the next cohort starts October 19th with limited spots, because market hacks work best when fewer people know about them. Stop playing their game. Start winning yours. Head to beverlydines.com to register. The last day to register is October 12th, or when the last seat is filled. Register now for the Hiring Market Hack Academy's fall cohort at beverlydines.com. Okay, so we're back, and we got to talk about something that's even more insidious. Burnout disguised as passion, the truly dangerous deception, because when I tell you this one's personal for me, it happened when I started my own business, and I literally couldn't believe how constant this was, especially in high achievers like myself and people who genuinely love their work, until I had to take that 30-foot step back and go, oh, dang, like, ooh, it really, really catches up to you. Now, here's why this burnout is almost worse, in my opinion, than any of the other types of burnout, because when you are truly passionate about what you do, the warning signs are non-existent, or if anything, they get blurred, because you might think, yeah, you know what, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but I can't be burning out because I love this. It's the passion, right? It's the grit. It's the commitment to the work. But research from the World Health Organization shows that 82% of employees are at risk of burnout, regardless if they're passionate or not. Being passionate doesn't make you immune. In fact, it makes you more vulnerable, because you'll push through symptoms that you'd never tolerate in a job you hate. You'd never tolerate it. And so what happens is that you look up and you're so exhausted, but you want to do the thing. I mean, have you had this experience where you are like, if maybe it's with your art, or maybe it's with your work, or maybe it's with something that is a passion area of yours, and you look up, you've had sleepless nights, you've had the days where maybe you forgot to eat dinner because you were just so ingrained in the thing. Yeah, that's still burnout, y'all. That's still what that is. And the reality is that burnout does not care whether you like your job or not. It literally does not matter. According to a Harvard Health research study on stress and gut health, it showed that the same inflammation, the same disrupted sleep, the same muscle tension happens whether you like your job or not. So if you love the work, and you're saying yes to everything, whether you realize it or not. You're staying late because you're making a difference. You skip lunch because you're in the flow. You work weekends because you're building something important. It all builds up. And if you're genuinely excited, you don't recognize that what you're exhibiting is the exact same thing that people who hate their jobs exhibit. The difference is that you're doing it to yourself. And if you're into that, like, listen, that's a whole separate conversation entirely. But odds are you don't want to feel that way. And it's even harder when it is surrounding something that you genuinely feel like is calling you, is driving you, which means it's all the more critical for you to develop the boundaries that you need to, especially if you're also battling scarcity mindset in the process. And it goes without saying that it hits women and marginalized groups especially hard because we're often told we should be grateful for opportunities, right? Like we're more likely to conflate our worth with our productivity. And we've been conditioned to believe that setting boundaries makes us seem difficult or not team players, or even to the extent of being retaliated against. Because how many of us have experienced this where, you finally stand up for yourself, you finally self-advocate, you finally are setting that boundary, and now you're a problem. Now you are not in alignment with the mission. Now you're not in lockstep with the team. Now you're an issue because everyone else is negating their own boundaries. But now that you're doing it and they're not benefiting from you self-harming, because that's really what this is, you're an issue. There are some potential warning signs that you might be missing, right? So if you're always tired, but you tell yourself it's because you're working hard, that's a warning sign. If you stop doing things that you used to enjoy outside of work because you're so focused on work, that's a sign. If you're getting sick more often, but you push through anyway for the bottom line or whatever they say that you got to push through for, that's a sign. Your relationships are suffering, but you tell yourself they'll understand. I literally am the person who is answering Slacks and Teams messages and all kinds of things at all hours of the day, at parties, at clubs. Listen, I was the person who was like standing off to the side in the bathroom, answering a last minute email. It's never that serious, y'all. And not only that, you feel guilty when you're not working, even during designated rest time. If you are unemployed right now, or you've recently been laid off and feel guilty when you are not applying to jobs, hello, I'm talking to you too. The SUNY School of Public Health Research found that this type of burnout costs companies $5 million per 1,000 employees annually. But for you personally, it's costing you your health, your relationships, and ironically, your long-term ability to do the work you actually want to do and love. Which brings me to the last type of burnout that we're going to talk about today, which is probably one of the most painful ones in my research on this topic, which is overproduction when enough will do, the excellence trap. Because let's talk about this. For those of you who have never been rewarded for doing what's expected, you've learned to do everything at 150% just to feel worthy. If you grew up in environments where your baseline efforts were never acknowledged, where you had to be exceptional to be seen as adequate, your nervous system has been trained to believe that enough isn't actually enough. The research from Omics Online on workplace burnout prevention shows that this creates a vicious cycle. You overproduce, which sets unrealistic expectations, which makes you feel like you have to keep overproducing to maintain your value. For women and people from marginalized communities, this is often survival strategy that became identity. Because how many of you were told, like my parents taught me growing up, that you have to do 100% when they only have to do 50%. Work twice as hard to get half as far. You learned early that you had to be twice as good to get half as much. You learned that being average wasn't an option. But here's what that's doing. According to the WHO's workplace mental health research, the $1 trillion annual cost of workplace stress includes massive losses from overproduction, people burning themselves out trying to prove their worth instead of working sustainably. Obviously, there's a physical toll. We know this. The NCBI stress physiology research shows that chronic overproduction leads to muscle wasting from prolonged cortisol exposure, decreased bone density, chronic pain and tension headaches, disrupted immune function. You're literally breaking down your body trying to prove you belong in spaces that should be grateful to have you, not the other way around. And the cruel irony of it all is that overproduction doesn't actually make you more valuable. It makes you exploitable. When you consistently deliver more than what's asked, that becomes the new baseline expectation. And when I tell y'all, doing this research was really sobering because this is my career, like quite literally, me coming in at excellence. And so when you come in at excellence, you create baselines that are insane, right? And then constantly watching people who are doing not even a fraction of the work that you're doing be recognized for, honestly, sometimes the most mediocre things. And it's not to diminish or demean anybody else's successes, but genuinely, if their baseline is 20%, when they do 30%, everyone's going to jump up and down. But when my baseline is 100% every time, 125% still feels like 100%. 150% still feels like 100% because it's just so unsustainable. And overproducers are actually less likely to be promoted because they're seen as reliable workhorses rather than strategic leaders, according to the Financial Wellness Forum. So I think about all of the times in my career where I'm innovating, I'm keeping up with the team, people feel trusted, they feel empowered, I'm creating new systems, I'm building out new infrastructures, I'm also doing my day-to-day work, I'm also constantly available. And then I'm looking around, waiting for that recognition, and it never comes. And I will say that where, for me specifically, and what I encourage you to think about too for you in your career, is that I have always known in my heart, like after a while, I'm going to walk away from situations that aren't pouring into me. But that is because very early in my life, I was taught by my parents the importance of moving quickly if your environments don't serve you, if your relationships don't serve you, and so on. And so I'm very grateful to them for teaching me that, because it, I think, has prevented me from having a lot of grief that I keep hearing from my community members that they're experiencing. 15 years of being a reliable workhorse, 10 years of being reliable workhorses, 5 years of being a reliable workhorse, only to be fired unceremoniously or laid off without any grace or appreciation for all of the work that you put in. And what just hammers us home so much more, because again, I'm such a data back girly, because I think it really helps centralize the fact that the studies continue to reiterate that working a little harder will not make them see your value. And in fact, the data from SHRM's burnout research shows that recognition-seeking behavior actually increases burnout risk because you're tying your self-worth to external validation. And I want to ask you, are you right now tying your value to the job that you have right now, or the next opportunity that you think you might get, or the audition that you're going for next week, or whatever it is? As a leader, are you doing everything you're doing for the hopes that you get that senior VP title, or that senior manager title, or your first manager title? Because when I tell you, the sooner that you acknowledge where you are tying your self-worth, the sooner that you start to build the building blocks of a foundation to pull yourself out of burnout. Because when I tell you this is such a sinister thing, if you are of a marginalized background, it's even more complex, because the recognition often never comes, or when it does, it comes with qualifiers that diminish it. And let me tell you, in one example for me, I was working for an organization. I've been grinding. I mean, truly, it was indisputable. Like, I had multiple people approaching me saying, "Hey, Beverly, you've been crushing it this year. We're actually kind of surprised we haven't seen an announcement made about kind of that next step for you." And I brought it to my leadership, and I kept getting the runaround, right? While everybody else is getting promoted, again, for seemingly significantly less, innovations than I had produced. Oh, Beverly, in a minute, right? I kind of get pushed off. Finally, I created a presentation. I literally crafted a presentation with case study, with it, like feedback from team members and so on, stating, I deserve to be in this role. Here's why. I deserve my elevation. Here's all the work that I've done. Like, I wasn't going to give them the opportunity to tell me that I didn't deserve it. So I prepared this whole presentation, scheduled this meeting. During the meeting, the senior leaders were like, "Beverly, we agree. You've been really crushing it. We got to reflect on this, though. We're going to be honest. It's not really where we are right now. I don't think," because I had said, I think I'm at the VP level at this point. I know I am, actually. And here's the data to support that. And what better way to reiterate to the company that you're invested in your employees than making our first ever VP the person that has truly done the work of overhauling our entire operations, overhauling the employee experience. People finally feel valued here. People are finally feeling respected here. All of this work I've done over the past year to complete, not to mention operational things that were just feats for one person to do at the time. And I said, what better way to communicate the continued development of our team than having your first VP be somebody like me? And I gave all this feedback and data, and I'd shared it with trusted mentors and folks who were like, "Oh yeah, like this is a pretty open and shut case, absolutely." But no, I was told that the company wasn't ready for VPs yet. I was told that while they appreciated the work I put into it, they were going to reflect. A month went by, and I was told that while they would promote me to senior director, they would not promote me to VP because the company wasn't ready yet. And then they also let me know that I wasn't going to receive a raise for that new title for a month, but that they expected me to do that work of a senior director just without the pay for it for a month. Because they were trying something out where people who've been promoted to new roles, they wanted to see how I did in the role first before getting paid at the senior director level. And they also did this to assess basically because they said, we had some other folks at the team get promoted and then leave. And so we just want to make sure. I said, what does that have to do with me? I've been one of the most consistent people at this company. What does it have to do with me? Oh, we just want to test it out. So just to reiterate to you all who are listening, I got promoted below what I deserved. I was not paid the raise that I deserved, even though I was expected to do the work of the role for a month. And it was basically given to me like I should be grateful for it. And less than 2 months later, they hired their first VP. So I guess they were ready, just not for me, right? And it's those moments where you genuinely kind of look back, and there've been a series of moments leading up to that where I was like, okay, as the tides were turning, that I realized, okay, but there's so many examples of that in my career. And I bet as you're listening, there's so many examples of that where you're fed this horse crap and you're expected to eat it. And as if like you should be grateful for the horse crap when you know in your spirit, when you know in your gut that you deserve so much better and that anybody else can see that you deserve so much better. The difficulty though is taking that next step and advocating for better. And I am very fortunate that I've always done that, but there's so many folks, and maybe you're listening and resonating, that don't know how to do that. And that's where this next section comes into play, because when I literally said, so just to be clear, I'm not going to be paid, but you still want me to do the work. Well, we don't want you to think about it that way. Okay. And just to be clear, we're not ready for VPs. Yeah, we're not. And then 2 months later, I'm interviewing a VP who started. I mean, right in your face, right? And they think you don't notice, or maybe they don't care, but it was so evident, not just evident to me, it was evident to other staff members who were like, yeah, this is effed up. If you're not thinking about what you feel you deserve because you're in this state of scarcity, you're in this state of job hugging, you're in this state of, well, I love what I do and most of my work is fine, and you continue to tolerate the hits, right? You can't create your own path to freedom, which is our final section of the episode. I probably made you a little uncomfortable with all the real talk that we talked about today. And maybe I didn't. Maybe I've given you some food for thought. I hope it's the latter, because you got to get uncomfortable. You got to talk about it. You got to think about these patterns that you either are allowing for yourself or maybe not even realizing are happening to you, so that you can really sit with, okay, how do I free myself of this? How do I break out of this burnout and truly embrace what I feel I deserve? Because let me explain something to you. If you've gained nothing else from this episode, you deserve abundance. You deserve to be celebrated proactively. You deserve to be celebrated for what you do, not because you've overproduced, not because you've burnt yourself out, not because you've had to prove yourself time and time again. No, you are worthy because you are, full stop. And in that knowing, I want you to reflect on these reflection questions. The first being, what story am I telling myself about what's realistic for someone like me? And I want you to write down the specific narratives. Is it based on current market data or old programming? Because then I want you to ask yourself, whose voice is this? Who is this? Is this my authentic assessment? Or is it inherited fear that I've gotten from my parents, from my friends, from social media, from my boss? Whose voice is talking to you when you are telling the story about yourself? The second prompt is, what would I pursue if I truly believed abundance was possible for me? Not what's practical. What would you actually go after if you believed you deserved it? Because you do deserve it. What opportunities are you not even looking at because you've pre-disqualified yourself? What opportunities? Because I know there are some. I know that there are things that you've been like, nah, even if it's in your personal life or in your passions. Maybe at work, you have this all narrowed down. You have it totally on lock and key. But maybe with your passion areas, you've just said, oh, that's never going to happen for me. The third prompt is, how is my scarcity mindset costing me more than the risks I'm afraid to take? I want you to calculate the actual cost of staying where you are versus the imagined cost of making a move, including the health costs, the opportunity costs, the relationship costs. And this is going to be hard, because if you have been subscribing to the fear-based mindset about the hiring market, about opportunities, about whatever, this is when that voice is going to get really loud. Would calculate the cost. You just got this job, or you've been here 3 years, or have you heard about the market, or have you heard that? Yeah. I want you to calculate the costs, because that voice is designed to keep you complacent. It's designed to keep you in that scarcity mindset. It is not for you. Under passion burnout reflections, I want you to ask yourself, what would sustainable passion look like in my life? How can you love what you do and protect your well-being? What boundaries would you need to set to preserve your long-term ability to do this work? Especially if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, or a small business owner, how can you create those boundaries so you can still love what you do? The next prompt is, am I using passion as an excuse to avoid setting boundaries? Be honest. Are you afraid that saying no will make you seem less dedicated, less invested, maybe less able? What would change if you believed you could be passionate? And the next prompt is, what am I sacrificing in the name of passion that I'll regret later? Is it your health, your relationships, your other interests, your friends? Is this sustainable for 5 more years, 10 more years? And you owe it to yourself to be honest as you answer these prompts for yourself. Because as we get into overproduction, what would enough actually look like for you? I want you to ask yourself that. Define it. Specifically, what does meeting expectations actually require to you? Not what your boss has told you meeting expectation is, not what other people have told you their expectations are for you. Separate the actual job requirements you have from your emotional need to prove to yourself. What am I trying to prove and whom? Are you still trying to prove something to people from your past? What would you change if you already believed you belonged? Because let me tell you what, the people of the past, they're doing their own thing. And if you are still living your life by the standards that somebody set for you that isn't even thinking about where you are or what you're doing right now, like that's the type of reframing you got to do. Because if you truly believed you belonged where you are, what would you change? And finally, how would I work differently if I truly believed I was already valuable? Not valuable because of what you produce, not valuable because of what somebody says you have value in, because a lot of us have chosen career paths or chosen lives based off of what has been reinforced, not by what we want to do. If you are in a career that you have been in because somebody said you were good at it, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. But if you don't love what you're doing, like what you're doing, and you're like, I've always been good at numbers, so I'm gonna hello, like, no. What would you stop doing? What would you start doing? Are there things you'd start doing if you truly felt like you have value right now today? And to integrate, what's one small boundary you can set this week that honors your worth? Start small. What's one way you can practice valuing yourself? What support do you need to break these patterns? Is it professional development? Is it therapy? A career coach, like me, or a different job? Stop trying to do this alone, because if you're a firstborn daughter like me, or if you're somebody who's hyper independent because of your trauma and life experience, if you're somebody who's constantly had to rely on yourself, let me tell you what, you cannot do it alone. You cannot. And the more you try to do alone, the faster you are burning yourself out. What would your life look like if you operated from abundance truly, from sustainability truly, and inherent worth truly? Paint the picture. Be specific. What would change? This is your time. And if you've been driving listening to this, if you are on a run, or if you're on a walk, or if you're doing something, I want you to go back. I want you to listen to the latter part of this podcast, and I want you to write these prompts down, and I seriously want you to answer them. I want you to take the time to honor yourself, because you have value and you are valuable. And if you are listening to this and people have made you feel like you're not without burning yourself out, I'm so sorry that you have been made to feel that your only worth, your only value is from when you have hurt yourself, because that's really how I want you to recontextualize this. If your company is asking you to do things that will cause you harm, like working through your lunch or abandoning your personal responsibilities on the weekends to take care of their needs, or not getting any sleep because you have emergency meetings late at night that don't need to be late at night, they could be rescheduled for the next morning, or whatever it is, and they're, let alone poor benefits, poor PTO, no opportunities to scale, they're hurting you, and they want you to be grateful for it. And I'm so sorry that you were made to feel like you should be, because you deserve significantly better than that. So to close, here's what I need you to understand, and here's where I'm still growing in my process, right, about these patterns. They didn't develop overnight, so they're not going to disappear overnight. And as somebody who's notoriously impatient, this is an awareness that is truly the first step of recognition, because it is hard. It is hard. I'm an impatient Patty, but it's not going to happen overnight. But the fact that you took this first step in listening to this episode and maybe even reflected on one or two of those prompts shows that you've taken that first step. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're having a normal human response to systems that were designed to extract maximum value from you while giving you minimum value back. But you know what? You're not powerless. And every single reflection question I gave you is a doorway to your freedom. You don't need permission to value yourself. You don't need anyone's approval to set boundaries, and you most certainly don't need to wait for the right time to start operating from abundance. You can do so right now. The bottom line is that scarcity mindset, passion burnout, and overproduction are all symptoms of the same disease. A world that profits from your insecurity and your willingness to settle for less than you deserve. But here's the revolutionary act: deciding you deserve better and then acting like it. This episode means nothing if you're not going to act on what I've taught today, because you deserve work that energizes you rather than drains you. You deserve compensation that reflects your value. You deserve to produce excellent work without sacrificing your humanity. You deserve to be promoted proactively or be provided the benefits you need so that you're not constantly worrying about your health or other things, and you can just do your dang job. And if where you are right now can't give you that, then this is the time to find somewhere that can. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And I've never been a huge fan of long distance running. A 5K is about the best I'll do. Maybe one day a half marathon, but because again, I like the sprints. I like to move fast. And if you're anything like me, you like to do that too. But let me tell you what, the burnout's waiting for you at the finish line if you don't train. This is your training ground. But this time you're training for yourself. What do you want to be doing? Who do you want to be? What do you think you deserve? And if those questions are hard to answer right now, that's okay, because you are not alone. You are not alone. That is it for today's episode of How to Give a Damn About Your Workplace. And I want you to sit with those reflection questions this week, truly. Like, really sit with them. Write them out. Be honest with yourself. And remember, you're not just surviving your career, you're designing your life. You are designing your life. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Stop being grateful for scraps. And stop working yourself to death to prove you belong. You already belong. Now start acting like it. I believe in you. And until next time, this was How to Give a Damn About Your Workplace. My name is Beverly Dines, and keep giving a damn about your workplace and especially about yourself.